Yeah, wait, one more minute. All right, we are live. We are live. Grab a beer and get out of the way. We can hear you.
I shared presentation slides via Dropbox in the activities page. I was asking, would it be possible to see the webcam view from the crowd?
We want to see it again. Lots of food.
Wonderful. Just a little adjustment so I can see you. Hi, Colin. Hi, everybody. Hi, Dusty.
Yes.
We are almost ready.
All right. It's 2:00. Fire at will.
Great. Excellent. So, is my sound loud and clear?
We can hear you fine.
Can
Yes.
people in the back hear it?
Let's see.
Can you hear Alexi?
Can you see me now?
Hey, there he is.
Hey,
Hey,
hey. Yeah. You see, I'm very sorry that I couldn't make it to Wiesbaden. I really wanted to be there. Please turn the webcam to the crowd. I have another computer next to this one in my vessel. My spaceship is very developed. And I can see you all. Hey, Rauli, SMN, great to see you, Emperor. And,
I'm a pinball as well.
you know, I was about to come there to Wiesbaden, but just at the final minute, I just barely escaped. The war wasps almost got me. It was so close. Thanks to some brave crewmen who were luckily sacrificable, I was able to survive. And now I am transmitting this message from my lair in my ship deep in planet Jyväskylä. Now, the good thing about all this is that I had to readjust my technology on my spaceship, and because of that, I made all this fancy stuff, and there's a higher purpose. You see, some months ago, when we were celebrating our fine Emperor SMN, we had a discussion about how it would be wonderful if we could have more deep touch to the championships games. And we talked with SMN about how it would be wonderful to have kind of a sports show about the championships. So what I've been doing now for the past couple of days has been testing this video equipment. Also, I have this YouTube channel here, and it's being, well, it's just a wireframe at the moment. But the idea would be that there would be discussion shows, you know. I would be interviewing and discussing with some great people like our Emperor and other guys about the championships games and stuff going on around. So I would be doing shows on that channel about planets.
We can provide you
And
the
something
first
that
material
we
tonight.
do at the moment.
Yeah, from barbecue.
Yeah.
Perhaps I could make one video today because I was able to evacuate my family into an escape pod and I'm all alone in my ship. You don't need to worry, they are the related on the planet Tatooine, so they're perfectly okay. I've been watching your presentations there in Wiesbaden today, Justias and Mentar's wonderful shows, and I believe my presentation resonates pretty well with their presentation. It brings a new angle. It discusses a lot of similar things and similar themes that were mentioned in their presentations, and also in the discussion that was given from the crowd. And the great thing is that I made a backup video yesterday in case these technicalities don't work. And it was a really boring video. So I was able to do my show in a whole new presentation. And let's see if it works better. But I'm now talking, last year in Nuuksio, I was talking about cosmology episodes. That was because the cosmology episodes were about when people, their understanding of how reality works didn't match up with how the reality actually worked. So they went very upset, and in planets it's seen as rage quitting, for example. The thing is, I love you guys, and I love planets. But what makes planets great, the great game, is the total freedom of diplomacy that exists there. We are able to do what kind of agreements and what kind of information sharing, and we can talk about anything we like. So I see planets as a kind of a sandbox game of diplomacy. And the bad side is that, as in the Dr. Strangelove movies, there's the scene, gentlemen, no fighting. This is the war room. There are sometimes conflicts and feuds that are really nasty. And my Cosmology World episode was also about that. But now, this time, I'm talking about another root of all evil. This awful thing called trust. You know. Let's see now. I will start by an example. Trust is, of course, a wonderful thing, but it's a great power that, as if wielded unskillfully, becomes something terrible. But I'll go back in time to this catastrophical die-hard sector. At this point, I'd like to ask, can you hear me really? Because you are awfully silent there.
We can hear you perfectly here.
Okay, great. Yes, this was a die-hard sector, die-hard 16. And this was a fixed turn game, 125 turns. So if one or two players won before the time limit, or when the time limit of 125 came, the game would end. And this was full of very good players. And just a sip from my medicine against the Hovas. And I was playing the evil empire here, and I started, and I realized that my neighbor is the lizard. And as Mentor said, this was of course a threat, but this was a wonderful situation to fix the problems in my race. So of course I wanted to ally the lizard and succeeded there. So I could get cloakers and Loki and great resources and everything. So of course my A plan for this sector was to get an ally win with Lizard. But what I also had a B plan, and that was a lot more detailed plan, and it was executed simultaneously with the A plan. The B plan was to be the biggest and fattest race at the fixed turn rate, 125. Because I saw in my starting situation that I was here at the top corner, and it was quite safe place actually. I was able to halt the crystalline to an unfavorable place for him, and I had the Lizard as a buffer. So I was able to build up quite safely there. So I started to do some diplomacy, and what I did was, like Mentor told in his presentation, I wanted everybody to be afraid of the big bad robot. So I made a silly deal that I would exchange him some superstar destroyers to some minefield protection in the center of the map. That was of course quite a bad deal for me, but the whole idea was to support the robot and to get everybody else to be afraid of him. And everything started quite wonderfully and according to the plan, except first the Lizard had to dock quite soon. So my A plan went there because of personal reasons, and my A plan went there, and my B plan was the only thing left. But I was the huge battle started between Robot and the Rebel, and I was terribly busy in other businesses, and I did exactly what Mentor said that you shouldn't do, is that I thought that everything is going exactly the plan. I didn't contact other players, and I didn't talk with other players. I was expecting everybody to work in a certain manner, and I was hugely shocked that they didn't work like they worked. What happened was that the Colonial, Orc, and the Rebel, wonderful players, they teamed up. And they teamed up also with Crystalline. But that wasn't the bad thing. That was still a good thing. The horrible thing was that the Robot and the Privateer teamed up with Federation, Birdman, and Fascist. And the most awful thing is, they thought I was in their team too. So what we had here was two big coalitions fighting against each other, and I had this evil plan I had been working all along that started wonderfully, but then I realized that I'm constantly in a situation that I should be playing a team game with these guys, and I'm trying to scheme behind their back at the same time. And then I tried to resign from this alliance, and there is quite a feud in the public activity feed of that game. Long messages about that, because people became quite upset about my actions, and of course I was also upset about that. They betrayed me by being friends. So what was going on here was a catastrophic situation, failure of trust and failure of finding out the other players' expectations, how they were going to behave in this game. So when we are talking about trust in Planets, my background is in public relations studies. And public relations and management, the concept of trust comes from sociology, pretty much, but this is something from the PR studies background. But the thing is that we all come to a Planets game with a personal background, and we have certain expectations about the other players based on what we know about them and how we see that the game works. And then we look at the actions, and then we create the reputation is built upon those actions based on those expectations, and we match these expectations and actions together, and what follows is the reputation. So what trust is about is that we are taking a risk. We are expecting the others to work in a certain manner. So it's a decision. In this game, we build ships, we make strategic moves, we need cooperation and deals to trade ships, we need to secure certain borders, and trust is a bet that the other guy doesn't stab a dagger to your back, that he actually trades what you want and guards the rear like agreed upon. So how to manage trust and reputation is about trying to figure out the other players' expectations about what the game is about and what is about to happen. And just like Mentor told in his presentation, talk with everybody and also check their game history about and ask these questions. How do the other players see what the normal game is like? What is normal behavior in Planets? What is one's tendency towards agreements? And what is one's tendency towards teamwork? Now, here are my rules of thumb that I've created. And I classify all of you into one of these three worldviews about how Planets works. Here is first the one true way of playing Planets that I really believe in. Bellum omnium contra omnes, the Highlander mode. There can only be one. In a normal game, you team up, so you become stronger. The idea is to cooperate and make deals so you strengthen your own position so you can win better. I think this is the way one should play Planets, but it's not the only way, and one can't argue that this is the only right one, because even though the point system is created in a way that only the victor gets the points and the beginning situation is such that we are all at war in the beginning, still, this is a sandbox game of diplomacy. We can decide ourselves how is it going to work out. Then is the second group, the knight in the shining armor. These are the people everybody can notice and remember, these honorable people who do what is agreed upon and who don't make schemes behind your backs. And then there is the third kind of player, which is the team player. And these kind of people see Planets as a team game. They try to find an ally and they play as a team. And it doesn't matter to them if they lose, if their ally wins. And this is the difference between those two groups. First of all, the team player doesn't want just to win like the first person, or he might do quite a lot of scheming and plotting behind the backs because they want to keep their alliances hidden and they just want their team to win. So I use as a rule of thumb these three groups. And when we talk about this die-hard sector, what happened here was that I started to play this game from my viewpoint. That was that first one, that everybody is trying to win this game. And I was thinking that all these great players in this sector were thinking the same. And it just didn't come to me that they could actually become team players in the sense that they just wanted their team to win. They just supported their main dog, top dog, to win. And that was what caused this conflict, the different understanding of the game. Now, here is another sector where that was very high difficulty modifier game, What in the World sector, and this time I won. And for big part of that was that I was able to manage the expectations and trust of other players when my opponents, and especially my main opponent, didn't. What happened here was I was the rebel. I was the rebel at the top. And I was fighting against the evil empire from the beginning. Or not in the beginning, because we started to communicate, but both we and the evil empire player, I and the evil empire player were like very class 1 players. We tried, for example, to negotiate border, but at the same time we were, as we mentioned that I would like to have that border planet, the next turn there was an evil empire ship on that planet. So that was how those negotiations went, and soon I understood that the negotiations were futile. We were just trying to get the upper hand there. There was gunboat diplomacy and everything. So I just decided that it was better to attack the evil empire. And I attacked him. But during that time, I knew that the evil empire was doing business with the Federation. But I had done background check with the Federation, and I have discussed with him. And I find out that he is actually a very strong class 2 personality. He's a very honorable gentleman, a knight in a shining armor, and I know that if he promises something, he keeps his promise. So he said that, yes, he's refitting evil empire ships, but he will not fly Federation Gorbies. He will not fly Federation Gorbies. And I believed him. And as this was my first game, like when Dasdia mentioned in his presentation that you shouldn't try to mimic other players' behavior in their games. This time I tried to do some esoteric economic stuff, and I made a huge fleet of Russians, but I had a big fuel problem. I think I managed to solve that fuel problem during that game and learn how to move those big fleets around. But at that time, I was doing rebel ground attack on the evil empire homeworlds. But I was trying to evade combat. I was doing rebel ground attack there and waiting for more fuel so I could get onwards. And then on turn 52, the Federation Gorbie comes out of nowhere and trashes like 5 Russians. And I was, of course, shocked. Why did this happen? But also the Federation player was shocked. What had happened was that the evil empire player begged and asked from the Federation to fly his Gorbies, but the Federation refused. So the evil empire player simply placed primary enemy, rebel, give ship to Federation and hold the Gorbie to the place. And what happened? That of course he won that one battle, but he lost the war because he totally lost all the Federation player was furious. He stopped all trading and cooperation with the evil empire because the evil empire had broken the trust, had broken the trust of the Federation player. So what I did here in this sector, what I learned in the diehard sector was that I tried to figure out from each player what kind of players they were, and I tried to treat them each individually in the same manner they treated me or saw the game. So against the evil empire, I did the gunboat diplomacy. Against the Federation, I tried to be very open and fair and square. The only problem, I won this sector, it was a huge success, but the only problem was the crystalline. You see, I tried to discuss with the Crystalline during the game, but he spoke Russian, and I couldn't understand him, and he couldn't understand me very well, so we didn't talk a lot. But during the game, I did some cooperation, I did some trading with the fascists, and the fascists managed to, he knew how to speak Russian, and he managed to do some cooperation with the Crystalline. So what happened here was that then the Crystalline saw that I was working with the fascists too. He was thinking that we were a team. So I was thinking that I didn't attack the Crystalline because he had a very small fleet, but even though he had a very small fleet, so he wasn't a threat to me at any point. He couldn't manage to do any communication with anyone else, so he was not a threat. So I was like he was like a bank. He was saving those planets to me for the end of the game. So the Crystalline managed to keep the robot and the privateer at bay. And when the game started to look that it ends, I went over and took the Crystalline planets. And then the Crystalline player was very upset because of that, because he was thinking that we were a team. So that was my only failure here. I didn't see that one coming. But with those evil Empire Federation relations, I managed to work out well and become out as the winning person. So here is something that when the differing expectations yield different results. Like Wittgenstein said that the borders of my language mean the borders of my mind. If you see the game as a team game, or you are only honorable, it's possible that you might be a little gullible, you might be a backstab at some point. But if you see this only as a Highlander game, as everybody is a competition, and you have this very cynical way of seeing the planets, you might become a bit paranoid and make huge problems. I think we've had some championship games that have players like this and have lost the game because of not seeing the opportunities and seeing threats where they aren't. So I'd like to say a third thing. When Mentor was about to ending his presentation, he talked just about this. There is something I like to call relation game. There is a relation game that's kind of a meta game that is going on during the game. What you want to do is to discuss with every player and have a good relationship with every player, even if they are your enemies or opponents at some points, or if you are not doing anything with them. Because as the game goes on and events unfold, you are in a better position to utilize these situations. Having a good reputation, having good trust from not breaking the other people's expectations, you can have those early game deals, but you can also have late game deals when, for example, if some player drops or something very surprising happens, you might become a new ally candidate, for example. And here are some little things to reinforce trust. The kinds of little things in the relationship game that, even though they might be the kind of things that don't really matter or don't give big benefit, they might mean huge importance later on. For example, gifts out of nowhere. I try to be as benevolent for many people as possible. For example, if there is no big benefit out of stealing a rope when you don't need that, when you have the possibility, you may, for example, say that I could steal that probe, but I don't want to steal that probe because who knows? And that's the kind of psychological thing that helps the person. The benefit of stealing a probe might be a lot smaller than the benefit of having a happy player somewhere else. Of course, the integrity, being friendly, putting interest in other person, all these things are things that make you more better in the relationship game. One thing also why I like to stress these things is that I like to see at the end, I like to see Planets as a kind of a board game situation that we are all sitting at somebody's place around the board game and sipping beer and playing together. And you just don't want to be a jerk in that kind of situation. It's not a good thing and it's not fun for anyone. It's better to be a nice person and have a good time so you could be asked to play board games next time too. So, in conclusion, you manage trust by managing expectations, talk and research other players in order to evade trouble and seize opportunities. So, you need to know what the other person is like, what he expects about the game, how things should work and move, so you don't end up in a shitstorm. Thank you. Thank you. Now, do we have some questions there?
How are you?
I'm excellent at the moment, right now. Thank you. I'd like to be there in Peace Garden, so I'm in that situation here. But I'm very happy that I was able to do this presentation, and
You're not
I'm
getting
very
your money
happy
back.
I'm now able to do these videos.
Do you think there's a fourth classification of players who is able to look at the three first classifications, which are quite true, I think, and decide based on that how to act with those?
You mean
Or is that-
sociopaths?
I'm sorry, but
Or
I need you to be closer to the microphone.
where's the active
It's
microphone?
impossible for me to
Okay,
hear
sorry.
what you are saying.
Okay, so do you think there's a fourth class of players who is able to look at all the three first classes of players and decide the correct action based on that, or is it included in being class 1 player?
I believe that you actually belong to one of these groups, but it doesn't it's not a shackles. You don't need to be there. You are able to see outside the box. It's like that Wittgenstein quote. You can break those boundaries of your mind if you take into account that the other players might see the game differently. And when you realize and understand what makes them tick, what makes them to do the decisions and what's possible with them, then you can play a huge better game. For example, those team players are it's very important to know if somebody is a team player, because sometimes if they are your enemies, you know that you can't reason with them. Because if they see the game as the kind of a team effort, and you are going for the team, they won't break their alliances even if the situation would be desperate. Or in another way, it's a wonderful thing to have a sidekick, a team player, if you are the one who's going to win. You don't need to be afraid of a backstab because the other guy is supporting you to the end.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Alexei, how would you go about
Closer to the
making
laptop.
sure that people classify you as a wrong type?
That's a excellent question because
I know.
First of all, one of the reasons I'm talking about all these nasty stuff all the time, backstabbings and all this stuff, is that I want to give a vaccination to people so they could understand that stuff like this could happen in your game. And I want to give them a vaccination that stuff like this could happen in your game by me. So it's very important, but the whole thing is that you need to have a good connection to the other player. You need to talk with him, and at the end, you can try to persuade the other person to understand what kind of person you are. For example, by showing facts. I, for example, have never failed a business deal in Planets. So if you trade with me or do something like that, I will deliver. So I would like to have that kind of reputation, for example. But the fact is that reputation is not something you can own or manage. It's created by game events and also by other people. So all you can do is to stay active and targeted and try to communicate with everybody to figure out how they see the game and situations.
No more questions?
Go closer.
I like
Closer.
do we need to get closer? I like the classification, but I was wondering if there's an alternative one in which you have a quadrant, like with selfish versus cooperative, and then on the other side, trustworthy versus, or say flexible, versus my word is my honor. And then I think the three of you are getting plotted in that quadrant, because I think a knight in shining armor can very well be a team player. He can also be doing it, but still keeping in mind, I need to win this in the end by myself. So I only make deals that fit my omnes, how do you say that? The first classification. Do you, what would you think about that?
I think that's a yes. Yes. The thing is that, of course, these were rules of thumb. These are kind of ideal models, and the thing is that they help you to recognize different patterns in people's game styles. And of course, when I, for example, play against other people's, that's one of the key reasons why I can only play at the moment one game properly, because I do research of the other players' background and how they've been playing and how they've been doing their diplomacy and stuff like that. And you get to know the other people pretty well, and you want to know them. So you also want to give some proof. So it helps you if you have these kind of models that I use, but of course, they are not always the full picture. I just think they are very handy, three models that show three very different kind of behavior. That, for example, in a situation that when alignment change or situations change in the big picture, that how do these people behave?
Yeah, and I like your classification, so don't get this as a critic or something, just thinking along. But I think a lot of people have at least two of the three in them, I guess. At least speaking for myself, I think. But would be interesting to raise hands which one feels confident with the classification, and then we can send or can save him some time in doing another. Then he can join another game.
I'm sorry. Is that going
Yes.
1970 speaking.
Yes, yes. I said.
Yes, I recognize
we
your
all
voice.
say-
I can't see you in the picture.
Oh,
You know,
I'm
we
here.
played together before.
Okay.
Cameras
Yeah.
here.
Sorry, I needed to be.
I
with
won
my-
that game. You took it second.
Yeah.
You are a honorable team player.
Yeah, so the 90 shining armor and the team player. That's my, yeah, correct. You got me right. And I would have classified you right as well, I think. Together we are a good team. Thanks.
Hi, Koski, Commander. I hope you're fine. I want to use the opportunity to encourage everyone to fight for the win and not as a team player as long he is not playing a team game. At least from the beginning of the game. Maybe if you have 20 planets and 2 ships in turn 80, then join a team. Well, better leave. But otherwise, I encourage you, always play for the win. That's it.
That's new for me.
Okay, special.
Playing planets and winning.
But I'd like to mention
Oh.
one more thing. One more thing. I see that, well, 2 things. First one is that I see that in YouTube, it seems that Isote is there commenting that nice that you mentioned your huge fleet. At least the users begins with T. So I'm sure that's Isote. And the second thing is that, like I mentioned, here is my, let's see now. I have this YouTube channel that I'm working on. That's going to be the Planet Extravaganza. And I try to make some videos there, but also I believe that we will have some kind of video about the one project we've been working on about the planet's off-site discussion forum, because that's something that many people have been working a lot, and I just don't want to now directly say anything about it, because I've been in quite a hurry during the last couple of weeks, and I haven't been able to stay up to date about what's the situation at the moment. So I'll have to discuss more about our situation, and I believe we will give some kind of announcement in a video form on my YouTube channel. I will put it in the activity feed at some point. But the point with the discussion forum would be that, first of all, we could have those long discussions about strategy and planets that could be modified and archived there and found later on easily. And also a place where you could discuss hot topics in a small corner without conquering the whole activity feed, and also a place where you could make funny pictures in the posts. It's important. But now I'd like to thank you, and I will be very happy to try to also to hear what Big Beef has to say to us.
All right, thank you. Does anyone in the Hangouts call have any questions or comments at this point? You can now unmute yourself and ask away.
And maybe you can tell who's watching with us. Would be nice to know.
Who's watching? There's at least Kiro. There's a Michael. And I believe Big Beaver is also online, right?
There's one thing now.
Milloin kommentit tulee, koska nyt isot teillä on joku kommentti, kysyä, että näkyykö se. Jos ei,
Someone is trying to speak.
And there's a Robin here.
Robin is watching from here. Hey!
Hey, Kiro. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Kiro.
No. Is he muted? No. Yeah, that's we use.
It's really good.
Yeah, that is weird. But the timetable right now shows that the state of the universe is scheduled to start 15 minutes from now. So let's take a small break and continue in 15 minutes. Okay? And the same Hangouts channel will work.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Right?
Ah, so bad.